2. Hello, welcome back to That Mill podcast. Joining myself, Omer. I've got two guests today from two rival clubs, but we're going to get the lowdown on Mr. Duncan Whatmore. Firstly, Johnny Bullock coming. Hello, mate. How are you going? You all right?
Yeah, I'm very well, thank you, Omer. How are you doing?
Not bad. You're the Borough fan, mate. So tell us about your podcast or your show, mate, just so you can give it a little plug.
Yeah, so we're the Borough Breakdown podcast. We're a Borough podcast that pretty much just dissects Borough games, win, lose, or draw. I know we'll get to a Cheltenham in a second, just to say that it beat us. But yeah, we're just a podcast that does pretty much all of that across Twitter, Facebook, all the social media, all the podcast providers, and YouTube as well.
Lovely stuff. And also Graham Falk is joining us, Sunderland fan. Thank you, mate. Welcome for joining us.
Thank you very much. I'm even more pleased that you invited Johnny 2 weeks after we just beat Borough. So thanks very much. Yeah, same old. Same, pretty much what Johnny said. I run What the Folk, which is just a uni project that's got a little bit too far out of hand and still continues. I don't know why. I should probably stop doing it. But if people want me to continue doing it, it's just that at What the Folk pod, we just chat about Sunderland games before and after, dissect stuff, talk about the fact that we don't sign any strikers on deadline day and have no strikers, and all that kind of stuff. So just your usual ranty football fan that chats about their football club and no one else cares about it. But if you're interested in it, you can find it.
There you go. I mean, it's the best way for all this stuff kind of brews from. Like our podcast was a lockdown baby. When lockdown happened, we're missing the pub chat after the games, and then you just kind of carry on from there, really. So, yeah, I mean, thanks to the pair of you, obviously, for joining. We're obviously, in the first part of the show, going to talk about Duncan Whatmore arriving at the Den. I guess, you know, I open the floor up. I mean, I'll come to you first, Graham, being the Sunderland fan, but obviously Millwall's completed the sign from of Whatmore from Borough. What was your initial impressions and obviously memories of Whatmore at the Stadium Light? Sorry, mate.
Whatmore's a funny one because, if you're asking for my initial memory, it's injury because he got 2 ACLs with us. The poor wee mate. But to be fair, Duncan came in from Altrincham, so we signed him when we were in the Premier League, and he came in as this really, really raw road runner type player that just puts his head down and runs in a straight line. And that kind of worked sometimes. But he got a little bit more all-rounded when Sam Allardyce came in, and Sam Allardyce would use him as an impact sub. And obviously, I can't remember the exact stats, but I believe it was Sam Allardyce's last 15 games, we only lost 3 of them. And at the time, it was the season that Leicester won the league, and it was West Ham, Leicester, and Man United or something had beaten us. And we managed to get results against, I'm sure it was Arsenal and Man City or something like that, and stayed up and relegated Newcastle, which was a really lovely time in my life. But in terms of Whatmore, he would come off the bench at that point, and he would sort of score a couple of goals here or there, add a bit of pace, stretch the defence. And we thought, Whatmore, who at the time was an England under-21 international, would potentially go on and blossom even further. I think as many people know, Sam Allardyce took the England job. Things went south. We got David Moyes. David Moyes is the worst man that has ever existed on the planet. We fell down about 1 million divisions, decided to put it on Netflix. And during that time, Duncan got a double ACL. He got an ACL when we went down in the Championship, when realistically he would have been one of our. He got an ACL in our Premier League season, until I lie, and came back in about November of the Championship season when we were already struggling, and hoped that him coming back would give us a bit of impetus, because obviously he was. I wouldn't say really highly rated, but we expected that he could progress, and definitely was a Championship player at least. He came back for 3 games and did his ACL again. By the time he came back, it was December, and we were in League One, and we had Phil Parkinson as manager. So he was kind of victim of consequence in many ways with Sunderland. And the one thing I would say with Duncan Watmore is he'll give you 100%. I never ever remember him not giving 100%. I'm sure Johnny will probably echo those sentiments as well. And he's a really nice kid. He did loads of good community stuff. I don't think many people have a bad word to say for Duncan Whatmore. To kind of put it into context, obviously we touched on before, Sunderland played Borough not that long ago, 2 weeks ago or something like that. And I know we're classed as rivals, but it's nothing on Sunderland, Newcastle or stuff like that. But when Whatmore came on, he didn't really get heavily booed. He got clapped. And I mean, if he played for Newcastle, yeah, he'd get booed. But I think most people really respect Duncan Whatmore, that in a way, I think he could have had a better career if basically he didn't have chocolate knees for a couple of seasons. And unfortunately, his nightmare couple of seasons with injury kind of coincided with Sunderland's worst period in history. And then when his contract ended, he was on a decent whack. And I think it was Neil Warnock that took a chance, and I think I'll probably let Johnny take on from there. But he's doing all right for himself, and I think, you know, obviously he's carved out a championship career, and I'm sure from memory he'll do a handy job and at least be an option off the bench at the very least.
Brilliant. Yeah, I mean, Johnny, take it over from there. I mean, obviously, he's mentioned the injuries, but then when you look at his statistics for Middlesbrough the last 2.5 seasons, he's featured quite prominently for you guys, and injuries seem to be a little bit on the backside now.
I'd like to think so for you guys. But yeah, Neil Warnock picked him up on a free. He had like a little trial, and then we just gave him a short-term contract. It was like, you know what, get yourself back to fitness. And I think the aim was really just to do him a favor and then let him, you know, go somewhere else. I think he had an offer to go elsewhere. And you know, he just did really well when he came in on the short-term deal. And from there, like, he just became like a very sentimental fan favorite. You know, like he's just like, you know, really good at really worked hard, good presser, direct. But what I would say is that he scored a couple of worldies, but the amount of sitters he misses is something else, to be honest. But yeah, but I think that's just Watmore though. Like, you'll love him, and I think you'll love him that much because I think obviously with Millwall fans, like, they want their team to, you know, grind out results, work hard on and out, in and out of possession, make a really difficult place to go. And I think he just fits that stereotype. And I think he's going to be a really good coup for Millwall. And I wasn't surprised to see him go, though. I think there's as time's progressed, and as we've developed, it just seems that Watmore's just started to go further down the pack a little bit. You know, Archer's doing really well. Obviously came in and did excellent at the weekend. You know, Akpom's been on fire this year. Force has done really, really well. And I'm waiting for Graham to go. Oh, we didn't do well against Sunderland, but it's not the point. We've done really well for most of the season. He just became like surplus to requirements. But overall, I've really enjoyed Duncan Whatmore. I'd echo what Graham said. Really good kid, works really hard, direct, good in and out of possession, and he'll just give you 110%. And I think that's just what every Millwall fan wants, to be honest. So
yeah,
for me, I think it's a good bit of business, to be honest.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely agree with you there. I think he will kind of fit in from the untrained eye, a bit like we've got George Honeyman, who's, you know, not really featured as much, but Graham will know Honeyman. But, like, you know, hard working is normally the bare necessity you need to kind of get into a Millwall team. And I think Watmore does do that, but also offers quality. I mean, to the untrained eye, it looks like Sunderland, in my opinion, I saw a few Sunderland games and Middlesbrough games when we featured and played against each other. Watmore was more of a winger, I suppose, for Sunderland. And then I guess Johnny, with Borough, he feels like he's a bit more of a forward, kind of across the front three, sometimes up front. Is it kind of varied at time to time?
Yeah, absolutely. He played across the front line, and for the last couple of seasons we've played a three at the back, like 3-4-1-2, or like 3-1-4-2, and he just plays as a forward, like centre forward, and just played off the probably the target man under Warnock, and then under Chris Wilde, it was very much pressing from the front. So Watmore fit that mould really well, and he's just done well in those positions. I think he can play on both sides, in terms of on wide, and can play centrally. But for me, I think his best position is centre forward, pressing, and then just try and create opportunities through that press. And I think that's where you'll find the more success from him. But he will last only like 60-70 minutes. So that's just get the most out of him for that 60-70 minutes, and then his knees will probably give in. So, but other than that, good bit of business.
I mean, Graham said obviously with that, I think he was more of a winger, wasn't he, at Stadium Flight, wasn't he, a bit more? I think he was, obviously didn't score many goals for you guys, but obviously, you know, like you said, featured in that Premier League season where you guys obviously had 15 games you mentioned there. What do you kind of, you know, in that sense, he was more of a winger, definitely, was it, at Stadium Flight?
Yeah, definitely. I think when he really came to prominence and his best sort of run of form with Sunderland was, ironically, under David Moyes, when we had like a really small period in that horrendous season where I think we won 3 and 5. We beat Leicester, we beat Watford, and we kind of, this is going to make me shudder, to be honest. But left-hand side, Victor Anichebe, right-hand side, Duncan Watmore, pace and power, Jermaine Defoe up front, and it kind of worked for like a little bit, and everyone was saying, "Oh, well, maybe that front three kind of works." And I think that was around the time he'd done his ACL. Funnily enough, I've just remembered this. The second time he did his ACL was in that game when we played against you. And our goalkeepers, both of our goalkeepers, just decided they didn't exist.
The 2-2 game, right? When Archer and whoever you had in goal on loan, wasn't he? The 2 free kicks. Shocking.
Robin Reuter. Oh my God! I mean, like he was the best of the 3 goalkeepers we had that year. So I don't know what that says, but he actually done his ACL in that game, and I think, if I remember correctly, we also had Johnny Williams, who's now at Swindon, who's similarly made of glass, or was for us certainly, and has been for a lot of clubs. And I think he'd done his hamstring within a minute of coming on as well. So it was like one of those games where you're like, oh God, everything's going wrong. So I think, unfortunately for Duncan Watmore, he is kind of that. For Sunderland, everyone has kind of time for him, but he's sort of a symptom of a time we would rather forget, because when he came to prominence was when we kind of didn't, and we just went backwards. But I kind of echo what Johnny says. I wouldn't have minded seeing what he was like up front, kind of over the shoulder, because he's definitely got pace, and I don't think he was a lot faster when he first came through. Don't get me wrong, you're going to lose pace of it, but I don't think he's lost that much pace where he's not a slug. You touched on the Honeyman before. He's a different player, but he's exactly the same kind of personality. He's the kind of player where if he doesn't give 100%, he's potentially a League One player, in my opinion. But he gives that much effort. It makes him a worthwhile Championship player to have. And you know what? I think Middlesbrough, Sunderland, Millwall were in different areas of the country. You know, like Borough and Sunderland are close to each other. Millwall obviously down in the capital, but I think, and I know I don't speak for every fan base here, and I certainly don't speak for mine, but I think we like a certain kind of player, and we have a certain kind of community element to what I mean. Football's everything to people of Millwall, Bermondsey. Obviously, football's everything to people of Sunderland. Football's everything to people of Borough, because, and I hope no one minds me saying this, we've got no else, and we kind of go for that. Yeah, I mean, it's just the way it is, isn't it? And I think when we see a player that'll give like blood, sweat, and tears for the shirt, then you kind of almost give them the benefit of the doubt that even if they're not that talented. And that's maybe harsh on Duncan Whatmore and harsh on Honeyman, but they definitely come from that era of, well, they never give less than 100%. And I don't think you can kind of knock that, especially in our sort of fan bases and the way that we think.
Okay, well, that's great. I love the sound of it. I think, you know, from the outside, like I said, I was excited by Honeyman, who's not really kind of had his chance yet, but I do think he can still come good for us, and I'm exactly the same with Watmore. So hopefully time will tell with the pair of them, really. Let's have so instead of take away the work rate from Watmore, because that's clearly what, you know, he strikes me as like a bit of a road runner. Give him the ball, he'll go, and like you don't know what you're going to get sometimes from him, from what I've seen of him, but you know his output's there, and he'll keep going and keep going and keep going and keep trying, which is all we ask for, really. Aside from his work rate, then obviously, Johnny, what would you say is his best asset or best quality to him? Aside from that,
he's definitely direct. I think direct's probably the best word to describe him. He's good in ball progression is probably his main attribute. And that's probably running with the ball and trying to take it past the defender. But for me, and the best you're going to get out of Duncan Whatmore is trying to get the ball into a target man or into midfield and try and play through the press, and then trying to get him on the shoulder of the defender, and that's how you'll probably get the best out of him. But also when you're against like high possession based teams, he is very, very good at creating mistakes from that position. But in terms of like different attributes, apart from like being like that direct nature of a player, I would agree with Graham that he is probably a League One player, but he gives you that much effort. Like you kind of mask it, and I don't think there's too much you can really bring into his game, which is excellent. I think his passing is just average, but what he does do, and you'll see this now, like, is that like when I said earlier, like he will score an absolute world. He's a goal for Borough where he takes on about 8 players on the wing, right? He takes on an entire team and scores. Yeah, and it's unreal, right? You go, wow, what a goal that is. What a great player Duncan Whatmore is. And he was top goal scorer that year. But the amount of sitters he missed in like 2 yards out, hits the post, or like 2 yards skies it. And then we were in that season as well. We had like Britt and Ashley Fletcher as well, who were doing similar things. So there must have been something in the water that Neil Warnock was cooking with. But it was strange, a strange season. But yeah, I would say just really good at ball progression. He will get you up the field when you're sitting deep and having to grind out a result. Duncan Whatmore's great just to kick the ball to, and he will just get you up the pitch, and you'll counter really well with him, to be honest. And that's how I'd probably say that his best attribute is.
Excellent. I mean, Graham, I think, did you agree with Johnny there? I think obviously from the outside I do. And I think he's that kind of great player you want away from home, where you're on the counter attack and you want him to kind of make a moment of magic. I feel like you don't know what you're going to get always from him, like I said, but I think he'll be that kind of moment of magic. I mean, do you agree with what Johnny's saying there?
Yeah, I absolutely do. I think, for me, like I say, it's kind of hard to remember the last 2 seasons of Duncan Watmore that he was at Sunderland because he was literally just knackered. Sorry, Duncan, you were. And he was having to get back to fitness. And obviously, he's kind of overcome that because I've never seen a period at Borough where he seems to be injured for a long period of time, maybe 2 or 3 games here or there. But he's very direct. I remember when he first came in, he came off the bench for Dick Advocaat's Sunderland when we had about 7 managers in 6 months. So Dick Advocaat was manager at the time. And he came on like late on. And that kind of when you're playing really crap and you just go, put the kids in. Well, Advocaat literally did that and brought Duncan Whatmore on, who would have been like 20 at the time, and he went and scored like a consolation goal against newly promoted Norwich. Dog days, man, Jesus. And I think after that, everyone kind of went, yeah, just put him on because he gets forward and he's direct. But I suppose his pace and the fact that he'll press at the top, like Johnny says, he'll make things happen. He might not finish it because he's not the perfect finisher, but he'll make stuff happen. There's actually a really, really good goal that he scored for England under 21s, talking of him scoring worldies, where Jordan Pickford's in goal. Obviously, both Sunderland teammates at the time, and he does that kind of left foot volley that Pickford can do, and he just takes it down on one touch, like takes another touch and just laces it in the bottom corner, and it's a brilliant goal. And I remember at the time thinking, oh God, we've got England's like goalkeeper here for the future, and we've got this potential England centre forward. So the potential was always there. The problem with Duncan is probably due to his injuries contributing to it. He never really had the chance to reach that potential because I think he would have been about the ages 22 to 25 was wrecked by injury. And that's such a prime time. It's like, imagine like for us lads who don't play football, we couldn't go out drinking between the age of like 18 and 21. Our life would be completely different. You know what I mean? You can't miss those drinking years. You just can't do it. For a footballer, obviously, he didn't play football. And I think he's still got that ability to push up top and press, and I think he is very roadrunnery. I couldn't describe it better. I'm pretty certain we used to call him roadrunner, to be fair. If he lifted his head up a little bit and he kind of like tried to use his left foot a little bit more and he didn't look so direct, he might have been a bit of a better player, but I don't think that's really Duncan's fault. He's either never going to be the player that you would hope he would be, or the injuries have completely wrecked him getting to that point. But does it mean he's not useful? No, he 100% is. Like, and again, I think he's probably made the move and probably played for the clubs that he's played for based on the fact that he knows his strengths played towards what the fan base like. And I think that'll be the same again for Millwall. But yeah, his strengths mainly are he's direct, he's fast. He was very fast with us. Obviously, he lost a bit of pace, but seen him for Borough and he hasn't lost that much. He's back up to speed now. And he'll have experience at championship level now as well. I mean, when we had him, he was a kid. And a kid that was certainly not all-rounded. He's got that experience of obviously 2 horrendous injuries. He's obviously very, very thankful for the fact he's still got a career, I think. And I think that's made him probably go even 10 times faster in the effort stakes and pushing high upfield. But he'll have the experience as well that he'll bring, and he's played for Borough for a number of years. And, it's just, I don't mind saying this, Johnny, Middlesbrough are quite a good team on some days. Sometimes not on Sundays as well for kickoffs.
Yeah, it's fine. I'll take that one.
Yeah, but he's played in a good team under some, and he's been rated by, I mean, everyone likes Neil Warnock, right? To an extent. And in terms of like Chris Wilder played him, yeah, Carrick hasn't played him as much, but Carrick has a particular style. There's good managers that played him. Sam Allardyce played him, and those managers all know what they're doing, whether you love them or hate them. They all know what they're doing. They're all wily old school managers that rated his work rate and rated what he brought to the team. I don't think that will change with Millwall. And you've got the added bonus of him being a bit more experienced than he was when we had him.
Definitely. That's great. It's not just there. I mean, Johnny, he strikes me as, what kind of character is he like? Obviously, you've got Borough, you've obviously got Johnny House in there, Paddy Mitt there, Del Fry. Is Whatmore one of the leaders of the characters of the dressing room, or is he kind of just goes about it quietly? I mean, obviously you're not in the dressing room, but like as a fan, like what kind of? I'm sure we'd all love to be. Like, I respect the dressing rooms, but go on. What kind of character is Whatmore would you describe him as?
He's just a lovely human being. Like, honestly, he's just such a nice guy. I think if you're like yeah, if you're a girl and you brought home Duncan Watmore, your dad would just love him. Like, you're like, you know what, he's a nice lad, him, you know, I don't
Yeah.
mind him. But yeah, I think he's just like a silent leader, like in a way where like he will lead from the front and will
Mhm.
lead through his performances rather than being that shouty, argy-bargy kind of like character. He's relatively quite quiet, but you just love him. Like you genuinely just love him. Just an honest, hardworking lad. I mean, you know, a lot posher than you think. But like, obviously, you think, oh, he's been at Sunderland, he's been at Middlesbrough, and like he's just coming with this really posh accent. You're like, oh, well, you can tell you're from Altrincham, can't you? But yeah, it's yeah, just lovely to be honest. Just a lovely human being, silent leader, and you honestly, I will be very, very shocked if Millwall fans don't like Duncan Whatmore. I will be stunned, like
Yeah.
stunned.
I mean, Graham mentioned obviously Neil Warnock. I think I saw an article last year where Neil Warnock described him. We didn't describe him as his love child, but he comes across like Warnock loved him. Like obviously he gave him the chance with his injury after he had a few months away from football, coming to you guys November time, whatever. Warnock like it was his love child almost, wasn't it? That kind of thing there.
Yeah, well, Warnock loves anyone that makes him look good. So, like, you know what I mean? He doesn't like the players that, like, you know, like, will just question any of his methods or anything like that. So, but, like, yeah, obviously, like, we did Duncan a favour. I think Warnock brought him in. Like, we were short on options. We had someone who was going to press a little bit more. And he came in, and, like I said at the start, like, he just came in and just hit the ground running. And we were just so surprised at, like, how well he adapted back into Championship life. And, you know, when January came around, there was a host of Championship clubs after Duncan Whatmore's signature, and obviously, I think us were just like, well, look, we give you this chance now. Warnock was, you know, doing his thing, and next thing you know, he signed like a 3 to 4 year deal with us, and he's just been around for it. He was around for a while, and you know, he's done really well in that time. But yeah, Warnock absolutely loved him. But anyone that works hard it's just clearly in Warnock's fan club, I guess.
I get the impression you don't like Warnock, but yeah, we'll see.
Marmite, you know, like he's fine. I like him, but just not when he's manager of your football club. Like it's very much, it's never his fault. That's what annoys me. It's
Yeah.
never his fault. But fine, I'm past that now.
Graham, what was you surprised to see Watmore kind of come back from his injuries and go to Borough and kind of, you know, have the 3 seasons he's had? Really, is that a bit of a shot to Sunderland fans, do you reckon?
Yeah, if I'm honest, because he did kind of come back in our League One season and he played. Oh God, I'm getting actual PTSD here. No offense to people who actually have PTSD, but it was a really horrible time in my life. When Phil Parkinson was manager, he played Watmore in his first home game against Tranmere, and we won 5-0, and we were like, oh, maybe this is what we need, the boring sort of Phil Parkinson type to get out of League One. It wasn't. That's not what we needed to get out of League One. But and we thought, you know, maybe Watmore coming back from injury will be the kind of guy. And to be honest, like it's really hard to dislike Duncan Watmore, and I can only speak from my opinion. When he used to come on in that end of that League One season, I was so like I couldn't be arsed. Like I couldn't be asked for Sunderland at that point because we were getting beat off teams like Scunthorpe and that. And I was just like, what's going on here? Like, and you bring on Watmore and you go, oh, well, there we go. You bring on Watmore and he'll run in a direct line and probably run the ball out of play because he's forgot to lift his head up. And in a way, when it got the end of the season, everyone was like, I wouldn't be giving Watmore a new contract. He's on far too much at League One level and he's not offering enough. So then when he went on trial at Borough, it was like, all right, okay, fair enough. I suppose if you can get something out of him, maybe bring him on a 6-month contract, add to the squad. If you told me he'd be there for like 3-4 years and make a really positive contribution, I suppose in some ways I'm not surprised by Duncan's character. You asked before if he was a leader. I think anyone who's been through those 2 injuries has to have a really strong character. On a serious note, I like to joke about sometimes, but obviously he's got a really strong character and he's a lovely lad. He's the kind of person who would like ruffle his hair. You know what I mean? Like, oh, Duncan, bless you. But I'm really surprised he actually managed to come back and do so well. The ACL is a horrible injury. You see people what they go through when they have ACL problems, and you kind of think are they ever going to come back the same player? I mean, 40 years ago, sometimes they didn't. like from one ACL, let alone getting two straight away. And I'm pretty certain, I could be wrong with this, so please don't quote me on it. I mean, this is on a recorded podcast, so you might as well. But in terms of his knee injury, I'm pretty certain he did one ACL and came back and did his other ACL. I don't think it was the same knee. Wow. Which is just like, I mean, how much bad luck do you want? So I kind of thought, how hard is that to come back and have? I thought he might have a career at League One level, League Two level, maybe. To see him doing so well at Championship levels, not surprising because the character he is and kind of how hard he's probably worked to get back. But on the flip side, I am also a bit of a realist. And when he got released, I was like, who's going to be paying money to have, you know, a guy who's not had a great injury record over the past couple of seasons? And when it ended up being the Championship and he's been there 3-4 years. I mean, when I was last on your podcast, Johnny, Duncan was still there and you asked me, well, actually, it was your pal, Tom, that asked me, Tom Green, great name, that asked me if, you know, who you're most worried about. And I think he was expecting me to say like Akpom and all these kind of players. And I was like, Duncan Watmore. It's just written in the stars. Thankfully, it wasn't. But it's testament to him. You know, in a way, yeah, I'm surprised based on what happened to him. But I'm surprised in terms of Duncan Watmore having the character and the ability to come back and make himself a valuable asset at a good Championship team. And obviously Millwall being also another good Championship team, which I'm sure he will. Not really, because of the character that he is. Lovely lad, incredibly intelligent. I think he did his business degree when he was with us. He's got like all these like honours and stuff like that. He's super intelligent. So if his career did go, you know, if he did his ACL again or something, God, touch wood, I hope it doesn't, Duncan. But like say he had another bad injury, he's going to be sound because he's got like loads of like doctorates or something. Like he's super clever. So wow. Good kid, really pleased for him. Hope he does well apart from Saturday, of course.
Yeah, I'll save the questions of who you're scared of on Saturday for the second part of the show. But Johnny, we'll wrap up the first part, mate. So I really appreciate your time today. I guess just one last thing of, I guess what's your predictions for him at the Den? I mean, it's a hard one for you to answer, the quantifier, I know. But do you think, is he going to be a player that will kind of better our side? I don't know how much you know about Millwall, but I mean, like, you know, you've seen us play obviously a couple of weeks ago. I think he is someone that will come in and give us that kind of option, I think, an outlet, I feel like.
Yeah, if he's not going to start, he's an outstanding squad player. You know, I think it's just like he's just going to be that first sub on to change a game. And if you need someone to get yourself off the pitch, he'll be really good. And to be honest with Millwall, the more I've watched this year, the more I've kind of bought into what he's trying to do in and out of possession. You know, your game was a really difficult game, and I think when you came on, I think it was just 1-0 and 4 scored, and it was a difficult game for long periods. And you know, I'm not surprised to see where you currently are. Are you going? Is Duncan Whatmore going to get you to the Premier League? Probably not. And that's like the reality is that he's just not a Premier League player. But now I've said that, it'll be a playoff final, Borough Millwall, and Duncan Whatmore's got to win, and that'd be brilliant. And then
quote it, get the video ready.
Standard in it, just standard. Now that I've said that, but you know what? Like he's better. He's definitely better in the squad. He knows people there like George Saville, and he's had a really good relationship with him when he was at the Borough. And so for me, yeah, good bit of business, really good bit of business. I'm sad to see him go, but it makes absolute sense for him to go to Millwall, better his career even further, and I'm certain that he'll do really good things for you. He won't score 20, 30 goals a season, but he'll chip in with 10 goals, and that 10 goals could be the difference, right? So
and miss probably 20, 30 sitters, I'll gather, by the sounds of it, right? Or...
Potentially, yeah, potentially. But if you create better chances,
yeah, we don't create as many chances as Michael Carrick's Borough. So I mean, we'll create some chances as long as he takes 1 or 2. We'll be happy.
But Johnny, he will.
Thank you very much, mate, for coming on. And
no
yeah, hopefully see you again in the future, mate. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, no worries, mate. Thanks for having me on, Graham. Lovely to see you as well. And I'll speak to you